I think that Donald Trump is a great president. I bet a lot of people stopped listening right there. And in fact, that's the entire reason this video exists. Because just a few days ago, I posted that exact same sentence on Threads. Nothing more, just I think that Donald Trump is a great president. And the reactions started almost immediately. People disagreed, people mocked me, people questioned my intelligence, people made assumptions about my politics. People even started arguing with me. There was just one problem. It wasn't the entire post. It was only part one. Part two had immediately followed that part one, and it said, if by great you mean that he has broken every promise to the people he campaigned for, caused record high gas prices, is the laughing stock of the world, has absolutely ruined the United States and any reputation we may have had. Oh, and he totally should rot in jail. Now, before anyone rushes to the comments, this video isn't about Donald Trump. In fact, the political topic is almost irrelevant, because what happened next was far more interesting. After posting those two messages, I found myself replying with the same sentence over and over and over and over and over and over again. Read part two. Did you read part two? What if you read part two? Again and again and again. The more replies I read, the more I noticed something fascinating. Most people weren't responding to my actual argument. They were responding to what they thought my argument was. The moment they believed they understood the post, they stopped reading. And that's when I started wondering, was this just my comment section? Or had I accidentally stumbled onto something much bigger? So I started digging into the research. And what I found, honestly, is a little bit terrifying. At first I assumed this was just social media being social media. Maybe people were scrolling by, maybe they missed the second post, maybe it was simply bad luck. Then I found research from Penn State. In fact, researchers there had analyzed more than 35 million Facebook posts containing news articles. Yeah, you heard that right. 35 million. And what they discovered was staggering. Roughly 3 out of every 4 news articles were shared without the person ever clicking the article first. Think about that. Not read and misunderstood, not read and forgotten, never opened. The headline was enough. 3/4 of people sharing the article who never actually read the article. Suddenly, my comment section didn't seem unusual anymore. It seemed completely normal, and I found another study. Researchers from Columbia University and the French National Institute discovered that nearly 60% of links shared on social media had never even been clicked by the people sharing them. Again, not misunderstood, not misread, never opened. At that point, I started realizing my thread wasn't demonstrating a political phenomenon. It was demonstrating a human phenomenon. And that's a much more important conversation. Because here's what I think was actually happening. I don't believe that most of the people commenting were incapable of reading. I don't believe they were unintelligent. In fact, many of them were clearly articulate, and many of them wrote long responses. The issue was not reading ability. The issue was certainty. The moment they thought they understood the point, they stopped gathering information. Honestly, we all do this to some extent. Human beings are prediction machines. We constantly fill in blanks, we constantly look for patterns, we constantly try to anticipate conclusions before we get there. Most of the time, that's actually incredibly useful. I mean, imagine trying to navigate life without shortcuts. You would never make any decisions, you'd never finish any of your conversations, you would never get anything done. The brain uses assumptions because assumptions are efficient. The problem begins when efficiency becomes overconfidence. When we stop reading because we think we've already solved the puzzle. Social media practically encourages that behavior. Think about how social media works. Nobody opens an app planning to deeply analyze every post they see. We scroll fast. Hundreds of posts, thousands of words, infinite content. The platforms actually reward speed. The first reaction, the fastest opinion, the quickest comment, not necessarily the most informed one. Researchers have actually found evidence that supports this. One large study examining tens of thousands of headline experiments found that people constantly preferred headlines that were simpler and easier to process. Makes perfect sense. Brain loves shortcuts. The brain loves certainty. The brain loves feeling like it already understands. But feeling like you understand something and actually understand something are two very different things. And that's where my thread became fascinating. Because the political subject almost didn't matter. The moment some people saw the opening sentence, they categorized it. I know where this is going. I know what this person believes. I know what argument they're making. Except they didn't, because the argument wasn't finished. Some commenters were literally arguing against a position that only existed if you stopped reading halfway through. Others seemed convinced they understood the entire message after reading a single sentence. And then I stumbled upon what might be the most interesting piece of research of all. Researchers at the University of Texas discovered something that perfectly explains a huge percentage of internet behavior. They found that people can actually feel more informed about a topic simply by sharing content related to it, even if they never consumed the content themselves. Again, think about that. Sharing information can create the feeling of knowledge. The researchers summarized the phenomenon with a phrase that sounds almost like satire. I share, therefore I know! And suddenly the internet made a lot more sense. Because now we're not just talking about people missing information. We're talking about people gaining confidence without gaining information. And confidence without information is one of the most dangerous combinations imaginable. It explains why people can become absolutely convinced about arguments they never fully heard. It explains why comment sections become battlefields. It explains why people can passionately debate positions that nobody actually presented. Looking back at my thread, I don't think I accidentally started a political debate. I accidentally created a reading comprehension test, and the comments graded themselves. Some people read both posts. They understood the joke immediately. They understood the experiment immediately. They understood the point immediately. Others read the first post and stopped. Others saw a familiar political topic and mentally wrote the rest of the conversation themselves. The irony is that the thread itself became evidence for the argument I was making. The comments became the experiment, and the experiment succeeded. What really fascinates me is that this just isn't only about politics. You see this everywhere. News headlines, YouTube titles, social media posts, scientific studies, work emails, text messages. People are constantly reacting to incomplete information. Not necessarily because they're malicious, not because they're stupid, but because the brain is trying to be efficient. The brain thinks it's helping, the brain thinks it's saving time, the brain thinks it already knows the answer. And that's exactly when mistakes happen. So what's the lesson? Honestly, it's actually pretty simple. The next time a headline makes you angry, keep reading. The next time a post perfectly confirms everything you believe, keep reading. The next thing you're absolutely certain, or the next time you're absolutely certain you know where an argument is going, keep reading. The next thing that you completely the next time you think you've completely understood someone's position after the first sentence, keep reading. Because after watching my own thread unfold and then reading the research behind it, I have become convinced of one thing. The internet doesn't actually have a reading problem. It has a stopping too soon problem. People aren't always failing to understand information. They're deciding they understand before the information is finished. And judging by both the research and my own comment section, that happens a lot. More often than most of us would like to admit. Now, here's the funny part. Somebody probably already typed a comment about this video. And if they didn't make it this far, well, I guess they just further proved my point.